Hello and welcome to Sports Talk here on Comcast SJTV. I'm Erik Alves. My guest today is Jim Rachels. He is the owner of the Stockton Cougars, now a member of the new Pro PASL League. And Jim, as always, a pleasure. Thanks for coming by. I really appreciate it.
Erik, thanks for having me.
Of course, many people know that you previously owned the California Cougars of the MISL. The MISL, as people may have read in the Stockton Record this week, ceased operations on the 31st of May, so about a week ago now. Was that something, even though you still weren't really a part of the MISL anymore, but was that something you had seen coming for a while?
Yeah, I really did. The league was having some troubles. They wanted to become, at the time, more of a regional league, and California didn't fit into that. Out here in Stockton, we were miles away from anybody close. So I kind of saw that coming, which is why I started exploring other options, and the PSL looked like a great option as they were entering the pro ranks.
You mentioned, you were quoted as saying in that article on the record that talked about the MISL ceasing operations, I was just the first guy who decided it wasn't going to work. So you took the high road, but I would imagine there had to be some vindication for you, knowing that maybe people were questioning the move from the MISL to the Pro PASL in the last month or two, as had been reported in the paper that you were in the process of doing that. Any vindication, any feeling of, well, hey, maybe I knew what I was talking about?
Vindication maybe locally, but not with my partners from the MISL, not at all. I knew that the MISL was not going to work out, and I knew that there was troubles. So if we were going to have soccer continue in Stockton, we had to look in a different direction. And timing's everything. I mean, with the PSL coming in, it's going to be a lot more regional out here, as well as nationwide and in Canada and Mexico. It's just a perfect fit for us, and the timing was right, and I'm really excited about it.
You mentioned the idea of the MISL trying to become more of a regional league, for the most part, just California out west, and then Monterrey, Mexico, for that matter. Were there other issues that you had with the league? I mean, clearly, you mentioned your travel costs were double anybody else's, basically going across the country every time you went on the road, with the exception of Monterrey. But were there other issues? I mean, if they had found a way to bring in 2-3 other West Coast teams, I'm not sure if there's a specific number that would have worked. Would you have found a way to stay in the MISL, or there have been a number of things that you needed change to stay in the MISL?
Number of things. Mm-hmm. Number of things. Dues that each team has to pay to the league is just astronomical. That hurts your ability to operate your team. Rules that were put in place through United States Soccer Federation, other things made it next to impossible to sign players. I had players setting out because they couldn't get clearances from the Congo. The Congo wouldn't even return calls, and when they did, we couldn't speak the same language. So there was a lot of things that really made it very, very difficult to field a team, financially field a team, and to try to run a team the way it's supposed to be ran.
Why do you think maybe the Pro PASL will be different, is more advantageous to you now as an owner of the Stockton Cougars?
Well, a couple things. They're not associated with the United States Soccer Federation or FIFA, and I don't think people understand, but FIFA doesn't even recognize indoor soccer as a sport. So it's a total stepchild. You're paying dues for something that gets nothing back to you, and then they limit that you can't sign players and can sign players and immigration and all of those other things. It really just doesn't make any sense. The dues in the MISL were just paying way too much overhead in that league for not really providing any benefit to us. So that was things that I had mentioned to the other owners that that has to change, or we will not be able to succeed. Mm-hmm. And then the talk became about being more regional, and I said, well, I don't fit into regional. Sure. So I ended up talking with Kevin Milliken. He was talking about forming a pro league, and I convinced him to go in the summer so we could keep the players playing indoor all year round. And then when the MISL started having the issues, he goes, I really want to play in the winter. And I go, you play in the winter, I'll be your first team.
And you are also the first player signed, Brian Farber, a former California Cougar. Bernie Lillevoix is still your head coach as well, and we'll certainly get into that quite a bit as well. We've mentioned the Stockton Cougars, the owner of the Stockton Cougars. I know that's something I think you wanted to do almost from day one. You took over ownership of the team on the 18th of August back in 2006, so basically two seasons now of owning the Cougars, let's put it at that. But you always wanted to go with Stockton, probably pretty happy now that you're able to do that, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. From day one, I wanted to change the name to Stockton Cougars, and from day one, the MISL told me no. They didn't think that Stockton was good for their marketing. They wanted California. This community needs to know that this team is their team, and the best way we can do that by changing the name to Stockton, and it would have been done 2 years ago if I could. So The first thing when I'm in the PASL, first thing that happened, the name's changing.
You mentioned Kevin Milliken, the commissioner of the PASL. Now, your relationship with him goes back, correct? Because you have the Stockton Pumas, the development team of the Cougars. We'll stick with that. And you actually were very instrumental in creating the initial relationship between the Premier Arena Soccer League and the MISL, having the teams in the Premier be the developmental teams for the MISL teams, i.e. the Stockton Pumas being the developmental team for the California Cougars. I would imagine that helped in this process quite a bit, the transition to the Pro PSL and the relationship that you now have with Kevin Milliken as well.
Oh, absolutely. And me and Kevin did work to get the PSL to be part of the MISL. And the MISL has some structural problems because they're drafting college kids and outdoor players and people that haven't played indoor before. It's a totally different game. The PSL amateur, they have 70 teams nationwide. These guys are playing at high levels. And you saw that this year with Miguel Adorado coming in and doing a great job for us. And there were several other kids that came up from the Pumas and made a real big impact on the Cougars at the end. We let some veterans go. People thought we were salary dumping. No, we're getting faster, more athletic players in there. And it really showed.
Of course, now in the Pro PSL, the theory is that you'll have less travel as well, that it maybe will be more intra-division traveling, teams on the West Coast, while you certainly, as you mentioned, Canada, Mexico, may be taking a long trip here or there. It won't be every trip that is a long trip. You talked about the league dues as well, so certainly two things at the top. What about overall costs, player salary, things along those lines? How do those compare to the MISL?
Depends. Basically, the PSL Pro doesn't have a salary cap. We have a luxury tax line. So if you if you go over that line and you pay dollar for dollar to the league, that gets dispersed out to the other teams. So we just set an arbitrary number year one, and basically the salaries will meet equilibrium. Because when they're paying a luxury tax, other people's getting a luxury tax, they'll spend that money on players, and it'll get to a point that's financially feasible. Nobody really knows where that number is, so after a year or two, that number will hit. And then, as long as we're making solid business decisions, the worst thing we can do is not make solid business decisions. Then you got teams folding and you're total in transition mode, which the MISL has been since their existence.